spend in Buffalo. In the other 51 weeks of the year, I'm a high school English teacher for juniors and seniors, which means that I have the privilege of working with them on their college essays, their college application materials, and helping them to begin that college process. So much of what I bring to those conversations, I learned from my relationships with other counselors, Boy State and Girl State here. Today you'll hear from a few of them who all have specific, diverse experiences in higher education, relevant to many of the questions that some of you have already submitted prior to today. That said, I encourage you to reach out to all on staff to ask them about their experiences. Each of them is an invaluable resource. Also, while we first hear from a few of these panelists about their experiences before we open up the floor for some questions, I remind you to be an active participant today. Many of you will look back on this week as the start of your college experience. Some of you are already a week in life after high school. You all have people in your life who are ready to help you have those conversations. But so infrequently do you have a chance to engage with such a wide group of people who have done it. Use them. Today, these people include Dr. Tim French of DePaul University, Stephen DeMeo of Norwich University, Jeff Luzo of Northeastern University, Elizabeth Carroll, an RA at UMass Amherst, Molly Coach of Lesley University at Massasoit, Haley Riddles of Smith, and Amy Berger of Mount Holyoke. I'm going to open it up to their experience.
Take this up right there. Hi everyone, my name, as Kevin said, is Tim French. I went to Boy State myself in 1997, and I've been on staff ever since, so this is my 24th year. I'm with T8 in the back. Thanks for the shout out. Thanks, I appreciate it. Yeah, great job. So a little bit about my background. So I'm originally from West Newbury, Massachusetts. I went to Pawtucket Regional High School. Is anybody from West Newbury or Pawtucket? 0 for 2, sweet. So that's where West Newbury is. It's where John Cena's from. So there's that. I went to Rensselaer Polytechnic Institute for my undergrad, and I majored in chemistry and minored in math and physics. I then went to Yale University, where I got my master's and PhD in chemical physics, which is under chemistry. And after that, I worked at Starbucks for 8 months. That's not a joke. And then I worked at Harvard, also not a joke, for 4 years. After that, teaching physics and physical chemistry, physics for pre-med. And since 2012, I've been a professor in chemistry at DePaul University out in Chicago. So I have a lot of experience of like what is college like, what is class like. Pretty much the way I explain it is when I was 18, I went to college and never left. So feel free to ask questions. We'll pop up questions. If you see me walking around, feel free to come talk to me too.
Thank you very much. Jen.
Is it on now? I'm Jenna, I was introduced. So I am from Pembroke, Massachusetts. I attended Girl State in 2014 and have also been on staff ever since. Not as long, obviously, but one day I will get there, I think. I attended Northeastern University and I got my undergraduate degree in health sciences, and I also pursued minors in biology and health, humanities, and society. So I really kind of got a full understanding of the health field and people and how they interact with our healthcare system. I decided in May of 2020 when I graduated in the middle of the pandemic to continue my education at Northeastern. I am currently there now pursuing my master's in public health, and I'm slated to graduate in December with that. I have been many different roles in college and a lot of different clubs and had a lot of different experiences, and I'm really happy to talk about any of those experiences that I've had or any questions that you may have about pursuing your master's degree following graduation, any questions about, graduating or picking courses. I spend a lot of time working my courses to make sure I can get the best experience in college and get the most out of it. Yeah, that's it.
Was Karen?
Hey there, my name is Elizabeth. I am a counselor for the town of Loyalty. Thanks, that was planned. I've been with Girl State since I was a citizen at State and Nation in 2018, and I've been on staff ever since. I go to UMass Amherst. I'm an economics and legal studies major in the Commonwealth Honors College. I'm a rising junior there. I'm on this panel because I'm an RA, but so I'm happy to answer any questions about dorm life and all that fun stuff. But I'm also president of our debate society, so I'm happy to talk about that. And I also work another job on campus in addition to being an RA. I do work with our admissions department, but granted, I make minimum wage, so when people like you hear that, they're like, oh, Elizabeth knows all the secrets. I don't know all the secrets, but I do know slightly more than the average UMass student does about how our admissions operates. Thank you for having me.
Stephen DeMay.
Well, so my name is Stephen Mel. I'm a rising junior at Norwich University where I'm studying mechanical engineering. I'm a member of the Norwich Corps Cadets, and I'm also Army ROTC. I had a scholarship contract for the U.S. Army Reserves prior to getting discharged. With that, I'm also a part-time firefighter at EMT, down here for the town of Holliston and Fallon Ambulance, and up in Vermont for our university's campus. Other than that, pretty active. If you have any questions about military life, military academies, the application process, I've applied to West Point, Norwich, and gotten the nominations, all of that. So feel free to ask me questions. Appreciate it.
Amy Berger.
My name is Amy Berwick. I'm a rising sophomore at Mount Holyoke College. I major in international relations. I went to a large public high school and then I transferred from there to a program designed for people who have dropped out or were at risk of dropping out. I ended up having to go to community college because I got rejected from every college I applied to. And I completed my associate's degree and now I've transferred to Mount Holyoke.
Molly Butch.
Hi everyone, I'm Molly and I'm from West Bridgewater, Massachusetts, but at Girl State I reside in the wonderful city of Tolerance over here. And I attended Lesley University for a little while. I'm an education major and they're a great school for that, but it was very, very expensive. So right now I'm attending Massasoit Community College to save some money. And eventually I'm going to transfer to another state school. So if anyone has any questions about that process, let me know.
Finally, Holly Rose. Haley Rose. Hi, Molly.
Hi, my name is Haley. I'm from West Springfield. I also am a counselor of Courage. I am a rising sophomore at Smith College. I major in psychology with a minor in Spanish. I also was lucky enough to be awarded the largest grant available at my school, so I only pay $3,000 a year. At a school, it's around $78,000. I also have worked at Six Flags since I was a freshman in high school, and I am the classroom assistant at our campus elementary school as well as a tour guide. Anyone has questions about being low income and applying to college or affording college on your own, I'm happy to help.
So right now we've looked at a couple of questions that many of you have already submitted over the course of the weekend. To try to distill out some of the themes that a few of you have taken a look at. Elizabeth, if I could ask first, just about some of the adjustment to college life in general. Can you speak a little bit to the process of how students, how you yourself, have worked through getting to know a roommate, getting to know the campus life, and about how long do you see that adjustment taking? I know for myself, it wasn't until October that I really sort of had a group of friends that I'm still in touch with today. Certainly I knew people earlier on from a orientation or something like that. But can you talk a little bit about how long it is to maybe feel a little bit unadjusted for the first few months?
Yeah, absolutely. So I can actually talk about my personal experience as a freshman, and then about how I see how my freshmen live in this experience. So when I was a freshman, I still do have a chronic disease where it made most sense for me to be in a single dorm. Disability services arranged for me to have that single dorm for the same price as an adult. It's really natural. It happens for a lot of mental health reasons, for anyone with any kind of condition where you need your own space. Like, yeah, from the talk to your colleges about that. No one tells you can do that, and often you don't have to pay the extra price for a single. So just throwing that out there. And so I was really nervous going into a dorm where I was one of the only freshmen in a single. I thought that people were gonna be like, oh, like that's the rich girl, she's really weird, or like, oh, she's like a loner or something like that. And I found it really helpful to I had a triple across the hall. I was like, great, 3 people in there, 1 out of 3 has to like me. And that's how I started. It's really just leaving your door open. Like, even if you feel like you and your roommate aren't really getting along, or like you feel kind of like you're going to a school where a lot of other people are friends already. Like, just leave your door open, pick one room, and say, I'm going to start there. And if it doesn't work out, that's fine, because everyone's in the exact same position. I've also had the experience of being an RA strictly during a pandemic, and so watching how resilient my freshmen were in terms of making those connections and really doing what they can to follow community guidelines, but also be brave and take that moment to knock on a door. Because I think we've all kind of lost a little bit of that human connection through these really unfortunate circumstances we're in, and it takes a little bit to get back into it. So it's totally normal to feel nervous and uncomfortable, or like you're the only one who doesn't have friends, because I promise you every single person is feeling that way. And it takes a little bit of time, but it will get better.
Molly, to that same point, what about being between 2 different environments, and what was that process like?
I think it's on now? Yeah, okay, great. So I was between 2 drastically different environments. When I went to Lesley University, I was living in Cambridge. We have 3 different campuses, about a 10-minute walk away from each other. And, I really just immersed myself in where I was in Cambridge. I'm walking around to get going into little different shops and seeing local businesses, and it was just cool to be living in a city. And then when I took classes at Massasoit, it was when I came home for COVID-19. So my classroom was my bed, so as a lot of people can relate to. So that was very different. But what's interesting is I found my professors at community college were a lot better at figuring out how to work around different situations. I think because they had worked with a lot more lower income students and students that also maybe did not have a stable environment to begin with. And I think that was really helpful for us, because
they knew how to approach different situations and give us the support we needed.
With respect to campus life in general and campus size in general, I'm looking at the Stephen, I imagine, Norwich, Vermont is far different than in Northeastern. I wonder if the two of you could talk a little bit about those differences.
Absolutely. So Norwich, for those of you that don't know, is in Northfield, Vermont. It's about 10 minutes south of Montpelier. As you know, Vermont, pretty rural area. With Norwich, we have 2 restaurants in town, and that's about it. Luckily, as freshmen, you don't really have to worry about that on the Corps Cadet side. There's a lot to do. We have a pretty full day every day. For civilian students that attend Norwich, they really try and make an emphasis on taking different trips, doing different activities. So there's always something going on. There's tons of clubs, there's tons of sports. We have intramurals as well, club sports. So there's a lot to do within a campus, but it is a really small place. So for those of you that are at a high school, that's about 2,000 students, it's probably going to be about the same student body as in high school. Just a little bit more spread out, but obviously not like a city as in Boston. So it's a lot of a smaller field, and it's really enjoyable. You get to know everybody pretty well, pretty fast. So it's a fun time.
So yeah, Boston is definitely a little bit different than Vermont. I will say I don't think I've ever had a quiet moment in Boston, and for me, I personally love that. Northeastern is kind of smack dab on Huntington Avenue, the one road that kind of splits the campus there. So you are right in downtown in the middle of the city with access to kind of everything that Boston has to offer. With around 20,000 students there at a given time, whether they're on campus or on co-op or not on campus, it's easy to feel like you can get lost amongst all of these students, but I think that really pushes a lot of students there to seek the friend groups that they want to have and really make personal connections with people. And my favorite thing to say is I can walk through campus one day and see no one that I know and make a new friend, or I can walk through campus one day and see 100 people that I know, and it's just completely different every day, but it gives you the opportunity to really meet a lot of different diverse people who make new friends and really put yourself out there, because you're not gathering on a green space. You may be gathering in a building, or you may see someone off campus downtown at Boston Common, which is maybe a mile from campus, wearing a Northeastern sweatshirt, and go up to them and say, I go to Northeastern too, and that's how you make your connections. And it could be on campus, it could be anywhere in the city, and I think that that's a really cool aspect, because a lot of the students aren't necessarily congregated on the campus, they're really spread out, and it gives you a chance to talk to people when you're out in public and really put yourself out of your comfort zone, which I really like.
Tim, I know you've been part of classrooms that are the kind of huge quintessential lecture halls, as well as those much smaller, kind of more intimate classrooms as well. Can you tell a little bit about the difference of what those classrooms tend to look like and what that experience is like?
Sure. So currently at DePaul is known as what's referred to as a primarily undergraduate institution, or PUI. So that might be a 3-letter acronym that you hear during all of this college stuff. Really what it means is that they focus strongly on undergraduate education, so people getting their bachelor's degree. Accordingly, since that's one of our main goals, in addition to goals really and centered around social justice, DePaul is a big social justice university as well, we really try to keep the class sizes small. So the largest class I ever had, and this was 8 years ago at this point, was 82 people. Currently, normally my classes are around 40 to 50 for big, quote unquote, big general chemistry courses. But I also had courses that had a dozen. I had a few upper level majors courses that only had 5 students. So it was 5 students, me for lecture, 5 students, me in the lab. Again, I teach chemistry, so everything has some lab component. So those are definitely good hands-on, close-knit experiences. Because a lot of what I tell my students is like, in lab, you're doing your thing. You're learning how to use the instrumentation. I'm here just to make sure nobody blows up. But you get to really know your professors as a person in that small part. So that's one big pro of having a smaller, that's why they talk about all these student-teacher ratios, just to see how familiar it is. At Harvard, I taught much larger classes. So those would be in a lecture hall, probably bigger than Hemingway. So for those students who have been in the Hemingway theater already, the lecture hall is definitely bigger than that. We had about 200 students in that class. There were like 4 professors, 4 of us teaching it. We had a whole bunch of graduate students helping out. So there's a lot more infrastructure. It's really easy at that point, as one would expect, to get kind of lost in the shuffle. So for those larger classes, you really have to be more of an advocate for yourself. There is tons of help available, but it's not like brought upon you, right? You have to take the initiative to come and get some help in these larger things, which is a harder thing to do. So that's, I would say those are the main differences between kind of the smaller schools and bigger school. So, I mean, there's pros and cons for each, and also it's kind of what you feel. Right? Some people like to be in a bigger class. So it's a personal preference.
Haley and Amy, I wonder if you could speak to the student perspective of what your classroom environment was like, and a little bit of what maybe relationships with professors and things like that, what that experience.
Yeah, so unfortunately I have not been in a classroom yet, as my freshman year was remote, but at Smith, our classes are relatively small all around, with some exceptions. Maybe like intro classes, like intro to psychology, will be bigger. But for me, because most of my classes were small, it's very easy to talk to the professor and get to know the students around you. So I would say when you're in your classroom, just try to get to know everyone so that maybe you can, start a group chat or just, get some study buddies. But in smaller classrooms, it is easier to get to know the professor, but I will say it's always possible, and I would recommend that you attend office hours, whether you're in a small classroom or a large classroom. The office hours, they're there for you, and the professors, they're not going to see you as a burden. I would just recommend that you attend.
Holyoke Community College, I attended mostly upper level courses as well as honors courses in LCs, which are learning communities, and it combines 2 different classes into one and integrates it into the curriculum. Those classes were between 10 to 15 students, and we were all very motivated to do well, so it was a very engaging environment. The professors were really great with helping us both in class and if we had anything personal going on in our lives. So it was a very supportive environment, and everyone was open to us that we needed it.
Stephen, you talked about some of your extracurriculars and some of that work. Is there anything, especially doing the course society, how do you work to balance that? And is there anything that has really stood out to you in that experience?
So time management, if you haven't already figured out, is absolutely critical in your life. I'm a mechanical engineering major. I'm in the Corps of Cadets. I do Army ROTC, and I balance 3 part-time jobs. It's a lot, and because of that, I really have to plan out my time. My calendar on my iPhone is always full. It's insane. But you really have to, when you get there, set aside the time to figure out how you're going to be successful. And that's another thing that's going to help. So you can get help in academics, but you can also get help in just general student life. There are always campus centers. We have the Career Center at Norwich University, and they will help you plan out your time. They will give you a sheet of paper, and it goes hour by hour from midnight all the way until midnight, hour by hour every day, and you write in, from 9 to 9:45, that's my study time. From 10 o'clock to 11 o'clock, that's school time, that's my class. But make sure to set aside that time both to study for your academics, but also set a time to stop for you. Know that you can't go 24/7. I've tried it, it doesn't work. That's how you get brain damage. So, going 24/7 is not always feasible. Set aside time for yourself. For me personally, that's my time where I go to work. It's just, work is relaxing to me, it's cathartic, I like it. But make sure to plan ahead of your time. Find someone to help you keep accountability of that. With the Corps of Cadets, it's a very structured lifestyle. We're told what to do, when to do it, and how to do it. And that really set me up for success because having an entire semester of that, I didn't really have a choice. My academic time was my academic time. My core time was my core time. And I got told when and how to do it and where to do it. So figure out what works best for you. Always ask people. Some people might have found a really good method to do it, and it might work for you, it might not. Be open to try different ways of scheduling stuff. Be open to do different stuff. Some people it's best in the morning to get up and do homework. Some people, pull that all-nighter and do it at night. But it's always different for everyone, and sort of work to find what best fits you.
Elizabeth, I suspect your day is not as rigorously timed, but being an RA, I imagine there are times that are yours and times that are not yours. How do you go about balancing your day and what ultimately do your extracurriculars? What should you get for yourself as well?
Yeah, definitely. There are some days where I look at my Google Calendar and I'm like, oh God, I don't know why I did that to myself. And never let yourself get to that point where, although it is helpful to have every little minute of knowing where you need to be and how to keep yourself on track to take care of yourself, you should never be looking at your schedule and thinking this feels unmanageable today, this is a problem. There's always a time where you can skip a class if you need to skip a class. You're not going to fail and flunk all of your courses if you miss one day. I mean, don't take an exam, but you can take time for yourself, and when you need that break, to take that break. In terms of being an RA, that job takes about 20 hours a week. Then I have, because I'm the president of the week, I spend 5 to 10 hours a week on that, and then on weekends I'm also traveling for that. And then I also have a job with Visions where that's another 5 hours a week. And you're doing math and realize I'm also a full-time student too. And although like was mentioned, I am not doing anything military related with my time. My time is very limited. My time has to be maximized, and my personal care has to be maximized so that I can maintain and schedule and be functional. So if you take away anything from this, it's learn what you need to do to keep yourself healthy and happy, and prioritize that. If you need to drop one class to take care of yourself, or you need to even just not go to a lecture that day and take care of yourself, you have every single right to do that. And anyone who tells you that that is wrong is just not talking in your best interest.
Molly, I have 2 questions for you. One, you mentioned when you talked in the first place that you were thinking a little bit about finance. Can you tell us a little bit about maybe some of the things that students can be really scared about, that would kind of demystify the things that maybe they shouldn't be as worried about, and help them to understand what they should be focused on? What are some things they should focus on?
So when you're focusing on finance, it's really good to break down how much everything costs. The cost of credits might be lower for one college, but then if you plan to live there, it can be a lot more. I think for Leslie University, it's about $16,000 a year to live on campus, which is significantly higher than some other schools. I mean, that is because it is in the city, and that can get really expensive too, living in a city. So I break down student fees, book costs, etc. I believe Leslie University is about $900 per credit, and Massasoit Community College is about $200 per credit. And when I transferred to student school, because I am an education major, so I will have to complete my student teaching hours, they are about like $400 a credit, depending on where you go. The UMass's are probably a little higher. So I would look at all the costs, break everything down, and then when you get your scholarships, your financial aid, I would like compare and contrast and figure out, if there's like a school you really want to go to, like that specializes in something. Like for example, I chose to go to Leslie, even though I can't necessarily afford it anymore, but I chose to go there because they specialize in education, and I've always known that I wanted to be an elementary school teacher. So if there's like a school that specializes in something that's more expensive, but you think it's going to be worth the loans and paying it off because of the education you're going to get and the quality of that, then go for it. I mean, that's like a position that, like you can only make that decision for yourself. Like people can give you advice and try to guide you, but I think that's something like deep down, like is this kind of work for me? And question two.
Well, so actually, I'm going to pivot a little bit over again here, because I thought that was a really wonderful point about specialization and picking the school that's right for what it is that you want to do. You talked a little bit about joining that profession in the middle of the pandemic. How did you go about that discernment? What ultimately brought you to your decision on major and looking studies?
Yeah, so I entered Northeastern as a health science major. I knew I wanted to work in healthcare. As a freshman in college, I knew that I was going to full steam ahead go to medical school right out of college and just continue my education. However, as I started to take classes, they kind of taught me more about how changes can be made to make health better for people and make different environments healthy. I realized that my interests really lied in public health. So as the pandemic happened, kind of end of my junior year, Northeastern is 5 years, so end of my junior year, going into my 5th year, I kind of was at a point where I said, well, this is where I need to make a decision. Am I going to take the MCAT and pursue medical school and keep going to school after 5 years, or am I going to go and work in the field and learn about public health and gain a new experience and bring that with me to my decision? And right when the pandemic hit, I said, this is what I want to do. I want to study this. I want to work with this. I want to work in public health. And I applied to my master's program in less than a month, realizing that this is really what I wanted to do and I wanted to be in that field. So I really kind of changed that perspective and said, medical school will be there, but public health is now, and it's happening, it's changing, it's rapid, and I see myself in that environment. And it really gave me a chance to kind of I work in a primary care setting now full time, and I can work with the information that I'm learning, and that was really important for me to recognize, because I'm super happy with the decision that I made, and I'm glad that I built myself up this way and was able to get to a point where I could say, am I going to medical school right now, or am I going to do something else, because I have laid out that groundwork building up to it.
What about the application process in the first place versus a transfer application process? Was one easier or harder? Were they relatively the same, or some challenges?
Yeah, so my application process for Leslie was through the Common App, so I filled that out and then I submitted that, and I believe I submitted a couple additional essays. For Massasoit, a lot of community colleges are open admission, so that was my easier application process. I just filled out the form and I got the email saying, congratulations, you're a student now. But I'd say that the application process for college can be really stressful, so if you need help, like go to guidance counselors, go to your teachers, they've been through it, they can help you. I'm sure anyone on the Georgia estate staff would be willing to like sit down with you at some point this week and like kind of go over like what the application process would look like, because many of us have done it before. So my advice would be like ahead of time, figure out which schools take Common App, which ones don't, and what like additional essays you have to fill out for each school, so you're not like trying to cram in a bunch of essays right at the deadline.
What do you think ultimately stood out about your college application, your college essay? What was that process like?
Yeah, so as far as my college application went, I was involved in a lot of stuff in high school. I was on the debate team. I was president of the environmental club. I did Model UN. I did Leo's Club, which is volunteer work. I did like a little bit of everything. And then I also worked different jobs. I worked at summer camps. I worked at Jordan's Furniture. I had like a bunch of different things. So I think like colleges like to see that you're really well rounded, and that stands out to them. You know, not only do you get good grades, but you're involved in, especially like volunteer stuff. They want to see like you're a good person and you care about others, and you're going to bring something to the table when you go to the university. And for college essays, I talked about how being on the debate team gave me like a new confidence, because I used to be a very, very shy person. Like I get called on in class and I would just like sit like this. I wouldn't say anything. And I used to get nervous sometimes, like when I came up on this stage and I was like, oh my goodness, there's a lot of people here. But write about something that like really like means something to you, like it's unique to your experience, because you know, people who are reading your application want to get to know you. And I think like for me, talking about my experience with debate and how I grew as a person, and then you know, I grew my confidence, I started to join other things, started to volunteer. Like you'll get to learn about you and learn like what you know, what you can bring to the table, I guess, and when you get to go to college. So yeah, I make sure that your college essays are unique, they're good, have people proofread them, and yeah, I think, yeah, just make yourself stand out. That's what colleges want to see.
Could I ask about your chosen course of study, if you haven't declared major as of yet? And again, sort of that same process coming out of high school, what were you looking for and how ultimately did you put those materials together?
Yeah, so I am actually still undeclared, because at my school you cannot declare until your sophomore year. So now I can declare in the fall or spring. I just have to make sure that I declare by the spring. And I actually really like that we don't come into the school with a major, because you can know in your mind that if you want to study something and take those classes, but you're not locked in. You know, you can always change your major, but it's there's less pressure on you that way. And I didn't necessarily know that I wanted to be a psychology major. I had taken AP Psych and done well, and I really liked it, but I was kind of focused on, okay, if I want to go to law school, like what will look best? But then I decided that I don't really care, and I just want to do what I'm passionate about. And so I believe that I will declare in psychology, just because I've loved every psychology class I've taken so far. Once you take your classes in college, I think it will give you a better idea of if the major is right for you, or if you want to switch your major. I would not stress too much right now about what specifically you want to major in, because you will have time and you can change it. And when I was applying to Smith, I wasn't really looking at any major specifically, but I did apply early decision, so that was part of my admissions process if anyone has questions about that. But for me, I kind of really needed to know that I 100% wanted to go to the school if I got accepted. The only way you can break early decision depending on the school is if they do not give you enough financial aid, but I believe that depends on each school. So yeah, I just had to know that I wanted to go there, and I would say if you're thinking about early decision, make sure they have a broad range of majors that you're interested in, because you don't go to school and then get there and realize they don't have what you're looking for.
I want to make sure that we get enough time to hear some questions from you all as well. But before we move on to that process, Tim, I'm curious, as somebody who sees students coming from high school into college, and through all the different application pieces that we've already heard from here, what do you see as the value or the benefit, if you see that there is one, to things like the SAT and AP courses? I realize those two things can be very different. If you can kind of sparse out what those differences are and any value that you see there.
So first on the SAT, a lot of schools now are phasing out the SAT and the SAT 2 subject tests. Some schools will use them as a supplemental part of the application. A lot of schools are moving away from it being required. People are worried that, like, oh, if I don't submit it, does that look bad? Are they going to assume that I have a bad score? It's hard to say what each admissions counselor is going to expect at that point. Hopefully they're training. You shouldn't get penalized if the school doesn't require it, you don't submit. So I would take them at face in terms of that. Same with the ACT, which is used now that I live in the Midwest. That's a very Midwest-centric test, but again, it's used across the country. For AP exams, AP classes, so AP says that they are the same as a college class, and in my experience, I don't think that's true. I think it aspires to be a college class, but it's still an honors textbook class. So in terms of workload, it's a little different in terms of expectation and rigor. So how deep you go in and what is expected. And things are just a lot faster in college. For example, we're on the quarter or trimester system. So each class is only 10 weeks. So we go through an entire 10 weeks of chemistry 3 times a week, and then we have a final exam. So I often I do a lot of intake advising, orientation advising, and we often suggest that students use AP courses for their gen ed or their liberal arts requirements, or things outside of your major. But that even if you did take, take AP chemistry, for example, and you took the exam, even if you could get credit, we still suggest, if it's your major, that you take it at the school. And especially if you're interested in a health career, so like pre-med, pre-nursing, pre-dental, pre-vet, any of those types of things. Those admissions committees, there's a word I don't know. Those admissions committees are looking that you have done science at the university level, at the actual university.
Could I ask you to just make sure, just in case I realize that we've been going for about 40 minutes in that, could I ask you to just say that piece of advice one more time to really make sure that hits home? As an AP teacher, I know that that's something that I'm telling our students as well, that it's a gamble on yourself to get that course credit, because an AP class is what, $90 to take that test versus, a couple $1,000 for something else. And so just to really re-emphasize that one again.
Yeah, I mean, it's obviously generalities versus individual cases, but yeah, I often suggest, again to reiterate, to suggest to my students that if it's a gen ed, like being a chemistry major, I need to take history and stuff like that. So if you took AP US history, fine, use that. That's one less course that you have to take, and eventually those add up also, right? So those count towards graduation. Even though I went to an engineering school, we still had liberal arts. It was called Science and Technology Studies, but it's science-based liberal arts. And so courses like that, that's perfect for the AP test, but you should really take courses in your major. At the very least, your review, right? And I don't like to say this, so I'll take my professor hat off. But chances are, if you're taking the course again, you'll probably get a good grade if it's review. So that also helps, because we all know that grades are the game that we play at some level in education, right? We all know the grade game. So that helps with that.
Thank you so much, and thank you to all the panelists for being able to give us a little bit of your perspective and a little bit of your background, and being able to talk us through what is something you are looking through in many cases right now. I appreciate that very much. Before we move on to your questions, I just want to remind you that as you line up we invite you to line up, we hope that you will line up and ask as many questions as you have. We know how many specific questions were in here that we just touched on a little bit more generally. I invite you to either ask any of our panelists directly, and I ask the panelists to just sort of jump in as you hear a question that you think you have a burning answer to. More specifically, please make sure that as you're lining up at the podium, do your best to keep distance from the person in front of you, and please make sure to keep your mask on while you're in line. If you'd like to take it off just briefly to ask your question, that's awesome, but please make sure that you're doing that, and I invite you to line up now. While they're doing that, can I just get a round of applause for everybody here? This first question here, thank you. Yes, please. Yeah.
Hi, my name is Anna Lamari. I'm from the city of Courage. In reality, I'm from Massachusetts. I actually have a few questions, and I'm really curious to hear you guys' answers. I'm sorry, you would need to know. Oh, in the yellow polo, I forgot your name. You mentioned that you have experience lecturing at Harvard. I wanted to ask, and this is just from personal curiosity, I was just curious, what is the environment like the student body from your experience? Is it diverse? Is there sportsmanship between do people between different classes and races and sexualities, do they get along well? I was curious because from what I've seen, like, everybody here who's gotten into this program, I have no doubt is a very successful individual and to work so hard to get into AP. And I have no doubt that at least one person here is going to end up going to Ivy League. And I was just wondering what the environment was like for your experience.
So each college is a little different, even within the Ivy League, and I kind of say that from the internet, my explanation. Yeah, the Ivy League is definitely very diverse. That is one thing that admissions counselors at all of the Ivy League schools are looking for. I mean, admissions counselors everywhere. And especially given both history in the last year as well as in higher education in general in the last few years. So there's definitely been a big push to that. So in terms of that, diversity, and diversity defined as broadly as you can define it, right? It's not just necessarily the color of skin. So they have people from low-income backgrounds, people from higher-income backgrounds. One of the big things I noticed at Harvard as kind of a con is that you brought up sportsmanship, and I know what you mean, and there's not like a good word for that. So Harvard is very competitive, and to the point where it's kind of detrimental at times. So some people might not help each other out because they think it's a zero-sum game of grades. Like, if I help you, then that means you might be better than me. Personally, opinion, that's really unfortunate. One of the biggest things in college is learning how to work with other people. And I think one of the best, and this is a very engineering school mindset, is the idea of like work hard, play hard. That we're all in this together, so let's make it better and easier for all of us to help each other out. So that is, I found that to be more at Yale. They had more of a work hard, play hard, help each other all out, we're all in this together type atmosphere. So even within kind of the Ivy League and as a side note, like yes, it's always good to aspire to whichever college, but there are schools other than Harvard, right? Harvard is not necessarily a fit for everyone. And if other questions come up, we can talk about that too.
I do have another question about you guys. Everyone of you mentioned going to a university that's exclusively in America. I was curious about stuff like applying to universities abroad, particularly in places of interest most commonly for American students, Germany or France or UK or Ireland or Scotland, which is, from my experience, anecdotally, it's expressly popular for students in Massachusetts to do a transfer, a foreign exchange program, and often ends up in places like Ireland or Scotland. I was wondering, what are the technical? Do you guys know anything about the technical processes about that sort of experience of applying to a foreign university?
I appreciate that. I will say, and thank you. I'm curious, maybe if there's anyone on our panel who has that experience, off the top of your head. And I'm curious if there is a show of hands, if anybody who does have an experience with that. I would invite you, if you wanted to connect with Beck there to talk at some point after. I'm going to invite the counselors to go through and talk through, make themselves available. I think that's a really good point. So definitely just kind of take eye contact with one another there and find each other. And Brooke as well. So thank you. And I think that's a really fantastic question. I want to make sure you do ask your guidance department because I think that's something that I know many of, or a handful of my students have done. And it is a completely different ballgame for sure. So see that out.
Thank you.
I will if I could. Sorry. I'm sorry. We're going to jump. We do have 2 microphones, so we're just going to alternate back and forth. You're next. If we could go to this next microphone back here, please.
I just went to the front of the line, so I don't have recording prepared yet. So I don't know if any of you guys have any experience with this, but I was wondering if you could speak on undergraduate and what you recommend if you plan on going to medical school or law school. Is there any specific things that you've learned along the way that could be good advice?
Thank you.
I can answer this question. I think if you're thinking of pursuing higher education after your undergraduate experience, I think it's really important to take those core classes early and really weed out what you want to do after you graduate from your undergrad. I think for me it was really important taking my science courses and my chemistry and my organic chemistry and all of those classes that I needed to take that were that baseline for me in medical school, in order to kind of get to those elective classes that really showed me what I actually wanted to focus on. So now, knowing that I still have an interest in medical school, I have taken those core science classes, and the electives have kind of guided me to say, I really want to focus on primary care and preventive medicine as my career. Should I continue on to medical school afterwards, it really showed me that that's kind of where I want to be in that field. I think it's important to understand that a lot of my classmates who did continue on right into medical school really pushed themselves and are feeling very, very burnt and very challenged right now. So it's important to, like we all said, take time for you and understand that you don't necessarily need to push yourself super hard early on. You can take it at your own pace, and that anything you're doing is enough. And there are plenty of resources and plenty of people you can talk to, guidance counselors, professors. I encourage you to talk to professors because often most of them, if not all of them, have higher degrees, and they're more than willing to talk about and encourage you how to pursue that degree after you finish your undergraduate experience.
Great, thank you so much.
Thank you for your patience.
You're welcome. I just had a question. I forget your name on the left. I'm so sorry.
Jenna.
So, I'm from a small school in Western Massachusetts. I have just under 100 kids at my school, and I'm trying to go to an engineering school, basically right next to the college that you went to. I think it's on the same street. I'm trying to go to Wentworth. Yep. And I was just wondering how much of a culture shock it is to be to change from. I have 18 kids in my grade at my school to go to. I was just wondering how. That small little grade size to inner city Boston.
So I will approach that question from a different perspective. I came from not as small, but small town on the South Shore, and most of my town looked like me. And I went to a college where it was extremely diverse, and everyone was coming from a different perspective, different background, not necessarily from Massachusetts, from all over the world. I myself pushed myself out of my comfort zone and lived in what was called the Global Frontiers living space, and I was one of 2 people who lived in that dorm who were from the United States. Everyone else on that floor was from a different country, different place, had a different story to share, because I wanted to get the most experience out of college, and I wanted to meet new people and see stories and experiences beyond my own. So I personally came from a place where it was smaller, I was very used to how things were, I was set in my bubble, but I really wanted to push myself out of it. So it's a really personal experience to push yourself out and say, there's this many kids here, I want to meet this many my freshman year, and I want to keep meeting these people. And I was very interested in sports, and I pushed myself. I said, I'm going to go to a hockey game, and I made a really good group of friends that I now continue to go to hockey games with, whether it be at Northeastern or the Bruins, but we have that connection. We may not have had any sort of interaction had I not said I'm going to go to the hockey game tonight. So really taking that personal choice and saying, I'm going to do this tonight, and I'm going to talk to 1 or 2 people, and giving yourself that confidence, and you'll be surprised at how well you're able to connect with more people than the 18 people that were in your school.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
Yeah, no problem.
Hello. I heard a lot about, especially from the Blue Polo, about what you do outside. You work several jobs outside of the school, but I didn't hear a lot about internship opportunities. How what you're doing in your college translate into the real world, and how do you think going to your college or going to doing certain things is going to help you get an internship or get job opportunities in the league? That's it, anybody. I just didn't hear much about it.
Internships in college are definitely a big thing. I'm sort of taking an untraditional route. I'm not doing any internships, but that's also because the jobs that I work right now is sort of the career field that I'm going into. After college, I will be going to paramedic school, hopefully working for Boston Med. So because of that, my jobs, what I do right now, my work, sort of is preparing me and getting me that experience to sort of build up my resume before going into the career field. But absolutely, internships are a key part of the college process. And like I mentioned before, my school has a career department, career center, and part of their job is to help you get internships. It's a free resource. When you go to my school, that's part of your tuition, is paying for these counselors to help you sit down and write resumes. I've sat down and we've gone over my resume. I've gone over cover letters. Any possible aspect of applying to a job, they will help you with. Applying to internships, they will help you with. They'll have career fairs. We have one every semester. And big companies with alumni always come in because they know the caliber of students from their school. Norwich University has a huge alumni network, and because of that, we have big companies from all over the country. We have Fortune 500 companies. We're a big criminal justice program, so we have police departments, fire departments, state police departments. All of those companies are coming into these career fairs looking for students for internships during the junior and senior years, and a lot of those internships turn into jobs. So definitely, it's a big part of college. It's something to look forward to, and it's something to look at your career center and see how they can help support you with getting those internships.
If I could just, before we move on, I see Timothy is taking my here as well. I can't stress enough the importance and value of internships in collaboration with your degree. They can be equally, if not more so, important. I see Tim has the mic as well, and I'm curious about the experiences. I know how good the quality of the internship programs are at places like Leslie and Northeastern, so I'd be interested to see that as well.
Yeah, definitely echo the Career Center on campus, as well as any of the student life or student service student-facing offices. Definitely, they're there to help you. That's why there are so many offices and so many places that help work. It can be overwhelming at first because there are so many, but if you go to the wrong one, they'll point you to the right one. So they have no problem. We do this all the time, right? So that's one thing I would say. Another is many schools, as part of your major course, like there's usually a 4-year layout of courses that you take to use as a guide of what you're going to take. So it's not like you're flying blind for 4 years. A lot of schools have built-in experiential learning, is now the buzzword that we use. But it's just, you learn by doing. So Northeastern especially, they're kind of famous for it. For graduating in 5 years, we go to a co-op quarter or something like that. So those definitely gives you interactions with businesses. And my engineering school, RPI, also had a big co-op program, especially for the engineers. And many students got jobs at their co-ops. So you really build the network there already. And if they already know and like you, then it's less they have to do in terms of risk of hiring. The last thing I would say is, especially as a science major, a lot of science majors don't do internships per se, but they'll do research with professors in their labs. So almost all professors on campus do independent research. So it's a question that they're interested in. We have research laboratories, and that is definitely a fantastic experience if you're thinking of graduate school in science, or it's really more of the science, what science is like, right? So a lot of in high school or even in college in our lab courses, you just follow the procedure, and like you already know what's going to happen, or at least, at the very least, I know what's going to happen. And that's really not how science is done. Science is creative. Science is constantly changing and problem solving on your feet. And research is a really good way of getting into that. We also find that it helps build agency and confidence, because it's really intimidating to be in a chemistry lab with all this new glassware material, and it's breakable, and chemicals are dangerous. So it really helps build that confidence. And even if you're not good at the lecture side or the class test side of chemistry, that's really not what chemistry is. Chemistry is jerking drops into one thing and making something else. And that's research is the best way of getting that.